malware. Well, you got a computer program that's running just fine. But if malware gets in there, do you see the malware? No, because it's below the surface. I'm going to suggest we live this way. See this line? See that line? That's the difference between your conscious and your subconscious. See Mowgli up here? That's your conscious. So since the 1200s, we've been taught that the conscious is everything. Unless you're reasonable, rational, and logical, you're somehow less than or weaker than someone who's emotional and understands the flow of things, right? So since the 1200s, we've genderized this process, have we not?
Yes.
Of the two genders that are found within this room, which one is considered the lesser of the two?
And
No.
he's married.
Who invited this guy?
You're talking about emotional intelligence.
For 800 years, we have taught that people who use emotions, feelings, the flow, are less than. So ladies, is that not you?
Yes.
We claim, as if I'm a woman, I would say, I've got mother's intuition, I've got women's intuition. I know I'm not a woman.
No, I said we've always known that wasn't true.
Yeah. But notice how we argue it.
Yeah.
The very thing that we fear, men, emotion, feelings, we are dictated by because we fear them. And it's no problem for my wife to say, Rich, I just know. Well, how do you know? I just know. Give me the facts, statistics, the scientific research behind it, and I'll go with you, woman, but until you give it to me, we're not going anywhere. Okay, but we now know that ain't working. And science supports the idea of intuition. Definition, intuition. Using logic and reason combined with heart, feelings, emotion. Okay, so below the line is everything that's happened to us and what we believe. Now, this is the rest of what we see. Our actions. Now, if our trauma was, our experiences were traumatic, we're going to go to a radical or codependent type of living. If, however, they were affirming, we'll move on into the flow. Now, today's not necessarily about that. I'm just setting this up to understand. We're still talking about leadership. But is there not a huge chasm in the world today, or what we call a dearth of leadership? How many books are written on what doesn't work? But there's not a single correlation in those books about what doesn't work. So here's what we're going to talk about today, or not, since we've had a little bit of friendly help on what we can and cannot do. So, assuming you take notes and share with what you learned with someone, you will come away with the following. So, quick tangent. If you don't take notes, you will forget 98% of what I share with you today within 48 hours. You'll forget more than 60% before you get to your car. The construct behind emotional intelligence is being a lifelong learner. We don't have the capacity, as you and I were talking about in the olden days, to remember the things we're told. So just a thought process. So right now, anyone who comes to my office, they will sign an agreement that they will take notes when they get to the office. I've got 30 years of experience and studies that I share with them, and they sit there going, yeah, that's right, that's great, I love it. What did I say? Well, I'm not sure, but I'm going to tell you again. Which means, by statistics, if they do actually listen, they'll retain 2% by the end of the week, which means if they come in weekly, how long will it take me to teach them what we learned that day? I'm not going to give them anything new but what we covered in that hour's time. I'll be there for years. Because they do not know how to learn. As a culture, we're not teaching our children how to learn. We focus on teaching. Learning is where it's all at. Okay, so I want you to be able to differentiate between a leader and a manager, appreciate the role of EI in leadership, understand how addiction affects leadership. Talked to my son yesterday. He called me about 7:30 in the morning. He's at a university. He's taking a class. He says, Dad, my professor has a PhD in psychology and neuroscience. And I'm going, oh man, I just busted the 10th commandment. I coveted what he knows right now. That's awesome. But here's what he said. He said the number one challenge we have in our society today is addiction inside the mind, and their behavior addictions, not the shooting up or alcohol. Everyone in this room has a challenge on what we call behavior addictions. Whether you admit it or not is irrelevant to me. I will sleep fine tonight. But the point of it is, until you are aware of your addictions and your challenges, they will be blind to you and they will control you. Kind of understand theory X and theory Y. I will briefly touch on this. This is back in the 50s. You'll remember the 3 A's of leadership if you write them down. And I don't think I'm going to have time to get to the delegation process, but number 7 is clearly on the agenda. I expect you to be awesomer than you are now. So that's where we're going to start. All right.